Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you are all keeping well, whatever that means to you. I know we all have different opinions, but we won't get into that right now because right now here on Drum Talk TV with me, Dan Shinder, is Mr. Peter Erskine coming to us from Los Angeles. I'm coming to you from Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix up in the mountains. Tell us where you're watching from and get your questions ready because we'll take a few questions for Peter. Peter, how are you?
I'm fine. Thanks, Dan. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever our viewers are in the world. I hope you're all well.
Yeah.
And despite Dan not wanting to get into it, hey, everybody, wash your hands, all right? And wear those
Absolutely.
masks.
Whether you think you need it or not. I want to first, there's so much to talk about with you, Peter. We've never had you on for an in depth interview like this. About 5 years ago, you did an interview with one of my guys, Andrew McCauley, at the NAM show, shortly after, right when you got with Tama. Beautiful, beautiful kid, by the way. So I'm
Thank
really
you.
excited. I got so many questions. We'll touch on a lot of things. The first thing, though, and probably most important and topical, is this wonderful CD, Three Nights in L.A. And what is so gosh darn refreshing about this is it truly is in modern times to be able to hear traditional jazz like this with tenor sax, bass, piano, and drums. It really is a masterpiece. Folks, it's about an hour of music. And before the lockdown, my wife and I listened to nothing but this CD over and over and over on a 450-mile road trip and back.
Wow.
And we just love it.
I apologize for not sending you. That's just the promo version. The actual
Right.
uh, CD is it's three CDs,
Oh,
so
wow.
it's 3 hours of music.
Wow.
Um, uh, we recorded the album over the course of 3 evenings, and there was every night was special.
That's awesome.
So it's a three CD set, and I was using an 18-inch Thomas Starr bass drum, just 12-inch rack, 14-inch floor, um, snare drum. These are Babinga wood,
Right.
with fiber skin heads, and uh, just four-piece kit and very simple miking. Uh, a couple overheads, snare drum and bass drum mic. And I think I even had him take the snare drum mic down. I said, no, I just want to go with overheads
Wow. Just a
and kit.
nice natural room sound.
Yep. And it's a really great sounding room. The room really becomes if you have a quartet, the room becomes the fifth member.
That's
It
awesome.
really, the sound of the space you're playing in becomes a big factor, of course. And I think a lot of times we don't let that enter our mental picture as much as we should sometimes in terms of playing
Right.
choices and stuff like that.
What is it about the room, Peter? Is it simply the acoustic treatments? Is it natural? Is it the size or shape of the room?
All those things, I think. I'm not an acoustician, um, but the room is not too live. There are no bass traps or where you get a rumble of sound
Right.
or a buildup of low frequencies. It's not harsh sounding. Um, they spent a lot of time and uh, money, I think, and the science of it. I think acoustic science is a little bit of as much of an art as it is a science.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But they got it right. I mean, I remember hearing stories about people going to the Village Vanguard and measuring every possible dimension of the room and trying to figure out
Wow.
what the material is. And who can explain? There's so many factors, and if this is that, then that becomes the other thing. And um, the age of the wood
Right.
in the room, materials. I mean, I think that's why people like old drums. Um,
I
Not
agree.
only is that wood itself aged in maybe the 50 years since the drum was made,
Yeah.
but it was a slow growth came from a slow growth tree that maybe had been around several hundred years. You know, when they got the timber for that wood. So uh, there's a lot of different things I think impact uh, the way a drum is made, and it's not just like they don't make them like they used to. I think in many respects, uh, drums have never been made as well as they're made now. But
Yeah.
there's something irresistible about an old drum set,
Yeah, absolutely.
snare drum.
Are you, if you don't mind me asking, for lack of more politically correct terms, which I'm not a fan of anyways, are you a snare hoarder? Do you have a collection of snares through the ages and decades of evolution of drum making?
No, my
Okay.
my my snare drum collection is personal. It's kind of random.
Mm-hmm.
I set out to, a Black Beauty from whatever year or this. I mean, I have uh, a mid '60s chrome over brass Dynasonic that I've had since I was in high school. Um, uh, I've bought a couple of power tone snares along the way. Um, I have a couple of old Ludwig snares, like Superphonic. That's like really great.
Yeah.
Um, and I have an old Slingerland kit. So I have two vintage drum sets. One I bought from Steve Maxwell, who has two shops, one in Illinois and one in New York. And I found this online at reverb.com. And it was a white marine pearl kit from 1965. It had never been played.
Oh, wow.
It sat in a music store for years, and then in the basement of this building. And Steve came across it. He wouldn't even play it in the video. He said, "It's never been played. I'm not going to play it." Uh, and I saw it, and I was at one of my students' recitals at the University of Southern California, and I went. I saw like 7 other people interested. I went, "I'm buying it," and it's a remarkable kit. I The way my camera setup is, I can't show you, but if anyone's interested, I'll send you photos.
Yeah, send me a picture and I'll pop it in the comments later.
Okay. Okay, I'll do that. And then I have a Slingerland Silver Sparkle kit from 1965, 66. They began making it in December of 65 and finished a couple of the drums, uh, or one of the drums in 1966 in January. Um, and that's a kit I like to use for certain projects where I just want a vintage, drum sound.
Yeah.
And there's just something about the decay, the envelope, the tone, the warmth. It's not an indictment of any kind against newer drums. It's just
Of course.
older drums have their own character, and so I have a couple of old drum sets, and I'll send you a photo of much of my snare collection. Now, if
Okay.
anyone's interested, um, since you brought it up, uh, I am selling some drums at reverb.com.
Oh,
Um, just drums that uh, this will sound like blowing smoke, but I'm not.
that's
Um,
okay.
you know, drums should be played or really like appreciated, and some of these are great drums, but I just wasn't playing them. For example, one of the Craviotto AK brass drums, number 11.
Oh, wow.
Um, and my good friend Bill Platt, a retired snare drummer from the Cincinnati Symphony, he emailed me. He said, uh, "Steve Maxwell has one. You get it." So okay. Um, Bill's my collector guru, um, and it's a remarkable drum. It's great. I'm just not. I think I'm just not that much of a brass snare drum guy.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and ultimately, I think I like playing wood drums.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other timely announcement I'll make. This is a 4.5 by 14 inch Tama snare.
Beautiful.
I'll play it for you guys. It's a combination of spruce and maple,
Oh, wow.
and there's a reinforcing ring on the top, not the bottom head. 8 lug.
Hmm.
The goal was I'd like to have a snare drum with my name on it. That number one is a drum that every drummer can add to his or her collection, so they'll have a great, versatile yet jazz appropriate snare.
Awesome.
And the most important thing, in addition to it being a great instrument, of course, is it has to be inexpensive. Um, I'm not interested in making money. I'm interested in this drum becoming a part of people. It'd be nice if people buy enough of them, I suppose. But I make a good living. So uh, this is a prototype, but I think they'll probably come out maybe at the next NAMM show next January. I'm
Great.
very excited. This finish, I think it looks pretty good.
It does. Can you click on the overhead and hold it so we can see the shell? I think it'll be a closer view. Check this out, folks. Yeah, there. Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah,
It's just,
yeah, that's beautiful.
there we go. But let me play it a little bit. I'll turn off
Sure.
my voice mic and play a little bit.
Okay.
How'd that sound?
Oh, it sounds marvelous. Yeah,
Oh, good, good, good.
yeah.
Um, yeah, a drum that size, it just responds so beautifully. Yeah, it's got, check this out.
It sounds great.
I think, yeah, I would normally mute that a little bit, but
Yeah, no, that sounds fun. I have a couple weird things, and folks, I'll take questions in a moment, so keep them coming. And Peter, maybe you want to turn on the front camera again.
I forget. I forgot.
That's okay. You mentioned
That was something.
Slingerland, and Slingerland is close to my heart because um, back in the day, there was a gentleman by the name of Mel Zelnick, and Mel Zelnick owned a music shop that was close to where I lived at the time, but not the music store that I went to. But it was near me in Canoga Park in the San Fernando Valley, called Music Stop. And Mel had played with people like Artie Shaw back in the day and things like that. Whereas I grew up going to Sidney Kay's music scene at Tampa and Victory in Loman's Plaza in Reseda, because I lived around the corner from there until my parents moved when I was 10 to the West Valley, farther west. And so, anyways, in 1977, my father took me to see Led Zeppelin. And when I saw what John Bonham was doing with timpani drums set up with his regular kit, after I got my hearing back a few days later, I told my parents, I want something and I'll do anything for it. And I played timpani drums in concert band at school at the time. I said, I want a pair of timpani drums. Now, what parent is even like receptive to something like that? My parents did not have a lot of money. So I asked, and that was the end of that. For about a month, this guy shows up in a van with his granddaughter, who was about my age at the time, 14. It was Mel Zelnick. My parents bought his original pair of Slingerland fiberglass pedal tuned timpanis from, I believe, 1959. I still
Wow.
have them. They're set up with my big progressive kit. I'm the second owner. and I just love these as an instrument. And I dug rosebush holes for my mother for about the following 25 years to pay that off. And they paid $700 for both of them. And they're weird sizes, Peter. They're 27 and 29 inch, which is, those are weird sizes, right? Typically it's even numbers with timpani drums. But I still have them. They still work. I love them. They're my favorite instrument. And when you talked about wood aging and things like that, my main kit, which I'll send you a picture of, man, it's gone through periods of when I left music for a little while and I wasn't playing professionally, wasn't even playing for fun much. They were in storage when I lived in Ventura by the beach for years, and that's where I took them out of storage. They were in storage for a while in Las Vegas when I was working in Australia for a couple of years. And it's amazing how great they sound. I'm a Remo guy like you, and I tried the Remo color tone heads. None of the drums have bottom heads, and they sound amazing. As effed up as they are from traveling around the country a few times and being stored in weird weather conditions, they
What
sound
kind of
amazing.
what kind of drums are they?
They are the nucleus is a 5-piece Tama Imperial Star. Then
Uh,
there's 5 other drums that are from my first drum set, a 5-piece Pearl kit from 1970, and I have 2 concert toms that were 1975 Slingerland Chrome concert toms, but in 1983 I had them all painted the same color that I mixed. It's this color blue that I gave to a guy who painted show cars, and he painted them all. And the reason they don't have bottom heads is because when I first had them painted, they came back the wrong color. They were really dark. But I had a studio session like in a few days. So I said, I told my tech, who still great friends with, I said, let's just put on the top heads, less work, because we got to take all this apart and send it back to the painter after the weekend anyway. So we did that, and the drums just sounded amazing in the studio. So when I sent them back out and got them back, I never put the bottom heads back on since 1984, and they truly sound amazing. They really do.
wow.
Yeah, it's a big, ugly kit, for I play a lot of progressive rock and stuff like that. Um,
You- it reminds me the single head tom thing. Um, you folks might want to check out. There's a drummer named Jake Reed, Reed, uh, former student of mine at USC.
okay.
Jake is doing a lot of recording in his home studio, and his first kit was I think it was a Ludwig Vistalite with no heads on the bottoms of the toms, and it sounds great for that sound, that style
Yeah,
of music.
Barrymore Barlow of Jethro Tull had a really big blue Vista light with no bottom heads, and it sounded amazing. It was
That
big
was.
in the '70s. Phil Collins,
I
Carl
mean, when
Palmer.
I joined the Stan Kenton band. My
Yeah,
Ludwig maple kit, I didn't have the bottom heads on the tom toms or the bass drum. There's a recording on YouTube of Buddy Rich sitting in with the band playing on that kit. It was at the Monterey Jazz Festival,
oh wow.
and it's pretty stunning to hear. Now the snare drum was my Rogers Dynasonic, but the way Buddy makes these drums sound is number one remarkable. And it was fun to hear, because I always remembered that night. Um, but shortly afterwards, I ran into Mel Lewis, and he read me the riot act
Oh really?
uh, for not having the bottom heads on my tom. So when I finally got my first drum company deal, it was with Slingerland
Hmm.
in early 1973. And I started playing on a 14 by 22 inch bass drum, 13-inch rack. I think it might have been a 16 and an 18-inch floor tom, uh, or 14 to 16. I can't remember. But great drums.
It
You know,
wasn't that Buddy's first brand, Slingerland, before he went to Ludwig.
who's that?
Buddy Rich, I think, started with Slingerland.
Oh, Buddy. I mean, Buddy played a lot of different drums. He played Ludwig several times throughout his career.
Rogers, I
Uh,
think,
he
too.
played Slingerland. He played Ludwig. Let's see. He played Rogers, of course.
Yeah.
Um, he played Fibes for a minute. He played Vox.
Oh wow.
He had a a replica Radio King kit that someone built for him. Um, After he'd gone back to Ludwig, and I can't remember what else. I got to play his fives snare drum. That was at Steve Maxwell's shop in New York. I don't know if that drum is still in New York or at Steve's other shop in Illinois, but it was one of the great moments of life getting to just, Steve let me play on this drum. It really was a remarkable.
That's cool. I want to, before we take some questions from the audience, I want to go back to this. I have a couple questions.
Okay,
How,
go.
if you could talk about how the quartet came together, and just so folks, in case you don't know, we've got George Garzone on tenor saxophone, Peter, of course, on drums, Alan Pasqua on piano, and Derek Olas on bass. How did the quartet come together and the selections of the music? And I know you produced it as well. Talk about that whole experience and how it all morphed.
Okay, well, Alan Pasqua and I have known each other for almost 50 years. I met him in 1971 at a jam session in Bloomington, Indiana, when I first started going to Indiana University. Dark is a newer acquaintance, but we've been playing together for 10, 15 years now. He's just remarkable bass player. Just swings like crazy, perfect intonation, just makes the best choices always. George Garzone and I believe the first time we played together was at the Zildjian event, the American Drumming Achievement Awards, that took place in Boston, where Elvin, Roy Haynes, Louis Belson, and Max Roach were all being honored.
Wow.
And I can't say that I drew the Elvin straw. I lobbied pretty hard for it. And so Steve Gadd and myself, Terry Lynn Carrington, and Marvin Smitty Smith were the four young guns paying tribute to, we were playing for our supper.
Right.
So the gentlemen got to enjoy the evening. And Garzone was teaching at Berkeley, and this was at the Berkeley Performing Arts Center. And they said, "Well, Pete, you put a band together with you, George Garzone, and the bass player John Lockwood." And John and George and Bob Gelati, excuse me, who just passed away. It was a great drummer. They had a band called The Fringe. Anyway, so then I started working with George by way of the vibes player Mike Minieri, who I was in the band Steps Ahead with.
Right.
Mike's one of my heroes for years. And Garzone he just was quickly becoming like one of my favorite musicians on earth. And the last time I played with him before this recording was a Steps Ahead reunion gig at New York at Birdland. And Garzone, he's the kind of musician, he'll turn away from the microphone and just point the saxophone at the drums, and it's just you and him playing. And it's every time I play with him, it's the most fun I've ever had playing. And
Wow.
he just seems to make you play better. So I thought, wouldn't this be fun? And so I contacted George and asked if he wouldn't mind coming out to L.A. He flew out. It was raining. Weather was miserable, but the music was wonderful. And the engineer, a guy named Aaron Walk, just did such a great job recording. And we had a philosophy, minimal miking, no rehearsal. We kind of just we did a master class at the University of Southern California the night before, and he had just started playing Have You Met Miss Jones?
Oh, wow.
And then we joined in, and I think when he said, "What do you guys want to play?" I said, "Well, that might be fun," And we looked over a couple of new tunes, and most of the originals. It's really the first time we ever played them all the way through.
Wow.
So everything's very fresh. And the reason I did that is not because I'm a purist. The reason I did it is because my favorite records were made that way. That's, there's some production albums that are a lot of fun. And I guess it's like, going to see a Steven Spielberg movie or something like, wow, what a production. But a lot of other times I'd rather see something that's, just improvised, or maybe go see a play in a theater or something.
Yeah, something more grassroots.
Of course, right now I'm binging. So guess what I'm binging on now?
What's that?
The Sopranos. I've started.
Really?
Um, yes, I watched it when it was broadcast 20 years ago.
Yeah. Wow, that was
But
20 years ago?
yep,
Wow.
there's a podcast now that Michael Imperioli and one of the other actors, um, Steve something, I always forget his name, uh, where they're episode by episode, they're just talking about each episode in
Instead of the
detail.
director's cut, it's the actor's cut.
Yeah, yeah, and they'll have guests on. But my son said, "Dad, you got to start listening to this." But he said the only way you can really listen to it, you have to watch an episode and then listen to the podcast.
Interesting.
So I've gotten through 3 episodes, and it's wild to watch it now, um, as opposed to then, in real time.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun. Aside from catching up on some TV shows and some reading, this has been a wonderful time to. Well, I've been exercising. I've actually lost 25 pounds.
Yeah, you look great.
Well, thanks. I feel good. I have a long ways to go, but finally I feel like I got over the hump.
Yeah.
Learning software, like I think there's nothing unique here. Me and 2 million other people are learning Adobe Premiere,
Yeah.
but or trying to learn Logic better, or Pro
Right.
Tools. And it's fun. It's a fun time of learning.
That's great.
I teach at artistworks.com, and I just signed up for ukulele lessons.
Oh, wow.
Because it's great. It's got all these lessons, and
That's
um,
awesome.
and if you and now, we were talking about this earlier. Now I'm trying to learn how to put together a Patreon site. Um, Several years ago, the library at Stanford University requested my entire tape library. That's reel-to-reel tape,
Wow.
master tapes, cassette tapes, DAT tapes, videotapes of every type, hundreds of items, and everything has been digitized. And we had input everything into a database, but now we're converting that database to a spreadsheet. Um, and I'm going to make some of these tracks available on my Patreon site. This is stuff you'll never find anywhere.
That's awesome. Wow.
All the
That's
bands I've worked with, I was always pretty active in terms of board tapes or taking photos. Um, so
a lot of chronicling of things. Yeah.
yeah. I was the band chronicler in Weather Report and some other groups. So folks, if you're interested to hear some stuff that, if you're a fan and you've never heard before, I'm just putting the site together.
When it's up, we'll do this again and we'll talk about it. That'd be great.
Okay. Do you know Zach Albetta?
I don't think I do.
He's a drummer and educator. He's based down in Atlanta now.
Okay.
A very sharp guy, and so I wrote to Zach. Hey Zach, give me some advice. So I got an email from him this morning. He said, change the pictures.
Oh. That's
Okay.
funny. Let's take some questions from the audience. I'm going to go through here. Thanks everybody for chiming in and watching. We appreciate it. Let's see. Going through here.
I can't see these, but
Edward Tucker comments that Buddy Miles never used bottom heads. Buddy Rich
is
started.
Edward Tucker online?
What's that?
Did you say Edward Tucker?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of snare drums, I just bought an incredible snare drum from him, a Slingerland,
Oh, wow.
red satin flame. It's just a gorgeous drum, and it's got this woody, centered, punchy sound. I've used it on a new project, and it just records fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
He does amazing drum restoration work.
Oh, great.
He's a drummer himself. He has a studio. He's back east. But if you're on Facebook, it's I think the Vintage Drum Collectors Group or something. Uh, Check it out. Just remarkable drums.
Oh, that's great. Have you? I'm going to take a question that I see from John Kinsting in a second. Do you know who Lee Pearson II is? Lee Pearson the second? I'll send you a video. Lee Pearson has become a good friend of mine. He's been on the show a couple times. He plays with Chris Bodie, and he's marvelous. You would love his playing. He's so good. He's watching. Hi, Lee. How you doing?
Hey, say Chris. Say hi to Chris for me.
Yeah. Here's two questions. The first one from John Kinsting in Michigan asks, Peter, I loved your old work with Jocko. What was it like playing with him? And do you have any Jocko stories that you'd like to tell?
Well, let's see. Um, well, what was it like playing with Jocko? It was great. It was easy. Um, you can imagine. I mean, a bass player with that much rhythm. Uh, I just tried to support him and stay out of his way. Uh, Alex Acuna told me something interesting. He said if you listen, to what Jocko's playing, he's playing like Wawanko conga patterns
Oh,
on the
interesting.
bass. And I said, wow, you're right. It really, his bass playing was influenced. His drumming. I mean, he used to say, "I got that Florida beat, man."
Right.
Um, but it was a different type of 16th note thing, different from the way Francis Rocco Prestia played, who was doing the same kind of stuff with Tower Power. Um, uh, Different from the way Stanley Clark was playing. Jocko just had his own thing. In addition to the rhythm, when he played fretless, his intonation was just so flawless.
Yeah.
Um, the one problem I had is I couldn't play with anyone else who played fretless because their intonation, nobody could do it like he could.
That's awesome.
And it was fun. Uh, what kind of guy was? Okay, here's the kind of guy Jocko was.
Okay.
Uh, he was kind of a fitness freak back in the day,
Oh.
and come on, man! And I was down at his home. Were recording the Word of Mouth album, and we'd get up and we'd run down to the beach, jump in the water, and then run back, and then get some fresh squeezed orange juice, uh, maybe a cup of coffee or two, and then start recording. Um, One day we went out to some sports park, and there was a softball game, and Jocko was. I don't know if I was playing because I'm not so athletically inclined, but Jocko was playing left field, and somebody hit a fly ball, and Jocko was a really good athlete, and if he'd started running towards the ball, he could have made an easy catch.
Mm-hmm.
Typical Jocko, he waits. He knows everyone's watching him. He waits. He starts running as fast as he can. He does a face plant in the grass and the mud. Skids with an outstretched glove and catches the ball
Wow.
like that. And it was completely unnecessary for him to do that, but he did it just for the effect.
Yeah. Speaks to his timing again.
The kind of timing and also just to entertain everyone. I remember another time we were in Oslo, Norway. This was my first European tour with the band. I think it was the first one, yeah. And we were being taken out to dinner after the concert by the record company, the CBS record company executives. It's a nice restaurant. And Jocko goes, Hey man, I'll be back in a minute. Check it out. So he leaves and he comes back, and he had warned me, so I didn't react. But I don't know if it was fishing line or just a real fine dental floss. But he went in the men's room and he just wrapped it around his head multiple times. So the skin it just looked like he had just caught the most horrible case of
Like an
some
allergy?
alien, you know, a contagious disease.
Yeah.
And he's just sitting there acting like nothing happened. And he liked doing stuff like that. He was a practical jokester.
That's funny. Thank you for sharing those with us. There's another question from Flora. Flora Wordsworth says, did you ever work with German conductor, arranger, composer Klaus Ogerman, who passed away in 2016? Did you ever work with Klaus?
Yes, I I had the good fortune to work with Klaus Ogerman on a Diana Krall album
Oh,
that we recorded in New York City at the Power Station Studios. I have the platinum disc up on my wall there. The album is called "The Look of Love," and I remember when we were recording the title track and Klaus had arranged it. Now the orchestra had not been put on yet, but we had the rhythm master sheets and Klaus, changed the harmonic structure a little bit. And we're just doing this. Something like that. And we got it in one take, but I remember I'm going, oh my God, I'm playing a Klaus Ogerman arrangement. This is like unbelievable. He was the sweetest guy.
oh, how neat.
And it was, but here's a funny story. I'm not a smoker, but I was
Right.
for a few years. I started in the middle of a Steely Dan tour. I was already 40 years old, which is
Oh,
idiotic.
wow.
It was after a really terrifying, frankly, flight. And the
Oh.
road manager gave everybody a cigarette and said, "Light up, you're having a cigarette." So anyway, I bought a pack of cigarettes, and I'd smoke like 3, 4 a day. I wasn't a heavy smoker, but I bought a pack and I wanted to have a cigarette after lunch. And I couldn't find my pack of cigarettes. And then I saw it with Klaus's stuff. And I thought, oh, that's funny. I wonder if he's like a
Klepto.
maybe a thing going there. Well, I knew they were my cigarettes, so I grab them and put them in my pocket. The next day, Klaus is like, he goes, I had 2 joints and I put them inside a pack of cigarettes for safekeeping, and somebody took them. He said, I was really looking forward to going back to my hotel room.
That's
I'm
hilarious.
sorry, man. Well, they're still in there.
Funny.
I think I was surprised I found them. I said, what the? Oh, okay.
Here's a question. Thanks. That's hilarious. Here's a question from Brian Kuderbach. He says, hi, Peter. I've been a big fan starting in the 70s. Loved watching you live with your skilled, aggressive playing in Stan Kenton, MF, as well as Weather Report. How did you adjust your signature style for each of these very different bands? It's a great question, Brian. Thanks.
Well, a lot of if I look back at a lot of my drumming, it's just like I didn't know any better, kind of, and you just do the best job you can because all of a sudden there you are. I mean, joining a big band was not, in my plans. When I turned 18, I was the house drummer at the Club Harlem in Atlantic City. I was really into, we had this funk band at college. I enjoyed playing with the big band at Indiana University, but I just figured I was, who knew,
Mm-hmm.
big, bright, beautiful, bad, good world out there.
Right.
I get called to audition for Stan, and so looking back, there are a lot of things I wish I'd known or had listened to, even though I'd grown up, a fan of the Kenton Band because I'd gone to the summer camps and I loved a lot of that music. But I had a lot to learn. A big part of the reason I got hired for that gig, because I was a product of Stan's music camps and educational activities, and Stan was doing music camps again, as well as clinics and schools. The guy who preceded me immediately, wonderful drummer named Jerry Mckenzie. He's still with us. He lives in Detroit. Jerry left his job at the time to go back on the road with Kenton. So Jerry had been Stan's drummer in the early 60s. And you can hear him on a lot of records. Great drummer. Then he became a policeman in Detroit.
Oh, wow.
And he was a policeman. And so Stan's got a cop playing the drums. And he wants to, attract young people to the band. Well, here I am, completely the opposite. I got long hair, young guy, and for whatever my drumming may have lacked in subtlety, I think I made up for it with some measure of energy and possibly excitement. So, a lot of young drummers I know liked it, and I gave some relevance
Mm-hmm.
to that whole enterprise. So, I think the simplest way to approach any number of gigs is just play what you want to hear. I had to learn to not try to play what somebody else might want to hear because there's no way to know that.
Right.
If I get direction from a qualified producer or the artist or composer, you notice I said qualified producer.
Yeah.
Some people, I was on one project, the guy, I went, don't even think of possibly going there with me. And that's part of in recording. You can make your wishes known, but it's in choosing the musicians. You set them free, let them do what they do best, which is to create. So a lot of the band leaders I worked for were pretty liberal that way.
Mm-hmm.
They encouraged me to be myself, including Joe Zawinul, who could be quite a control freak, but Joe was, man, we don't want you to sound like somebody else. We want to hear you. And Donald Fagen was Steely Dan at one point. He said, I don't care about that famous drummer or this other famous drummer who played on our records. Let's hear your stuff.
That's great.
And Keith Carlock is the perfect drummer for that band now because he can provide all this stability, the rock solid backbeat drumming they need, and yet give them all the voodoo.
Yeah.
That Walter Becker's no longer with us. I'm sorry to say, but what Donald Fagen was looking for. I mean, one time Donald came up to me during rehearsals with Steely Dan. Said, "Listen, why don't you play it like you're Tony Williams and you just took some LSD?" I said, "I'll try, but I just don't hear it."
Yeah, and how do you create that in your mind? Like, what is that?
I tried for about 10 seconds and just said, this is the way I'm going to play it.
That's hilarious.
If he likes it, cool. If he doesn't, fine.
Back when you were doing Weather Report, did you guys know then? This sounds weird. Did you guys know what you were doing? What I mean by that is, how calculated was the innovation, or did it show as innovated as it became after the fact when there was more context built into the times and everything? Was it that calculated, or were you just guys doing your thing and this is what it was, and it was seen as, you know what I mean? It's kind of a,
I
I don't know if I'm asking
I,
that properly.
I was in the middle of it, and um, just trying to. I think Zavon put it. He said, "Man, we're all just trying to do the best we can."
Mm-hmm.
I'm fairly critical of a lot of my own work with the band. I was such a big fan of uh, earlier versions of the band with Eric Ravad. I couldn't play that way with the band because it was so much louder by the time I joined, and the electric bass was a whole different creature. And also my drumming had, being on the road for 2 years with Maynard Ferguson, my drumming had changed.
Right.
And when I met Jocko and heard Heavy Weather, with Alex Acuna and Manolo, I told Jocko, I said, "This is the version I've been waiting my entire life for, as far as the report goes. It's perfect. Don't touch it. Just keep it." So I was quite surprised to get a call. And when Jocko heard me, I think he recognized something in my beat. I've done this shout out before. I'll do it again. There was a drummer. I just saw him in January in New Orleans. His name is Alan, spelled Allyn, Alan Robinson. If you guys want to hear a great drum beat, go on YouTube. Wayne Cochran, spelled Cochran. The song is called "Somebody's Been Cutting In on My Groove." And this was a song I loved listening to in college when I was like 17. And it made some kind of impression because I think when Jocko heard me for the first time, he recognized that beat, and so I came with that set of qualifications. So he knew he'd be comfortable, but I had all these other pedigrees of being a big band drummer. I could do the strong playing because Maynard's band was pretty powerful. And so he recommended me, and so Weather Report called me, and I turned it down.
Oh, wow.
Because they wanted me to fly out, and I was only free for one day. I could do one day of recording, and I knew I wasn't ready. And also the weather was bad. There was a lot of winter storms. I was in the Midwest, and I thought, I can't.
Ironically.
Yes, well, there you go. Very good. And I thought, I can't hang Maynard up. I get stuck somewhere.
Right.
So they were sort of impressed that I turned it down. When they called me again, I didn't turn it down the second time. Meanwhile, everyone was like, "What the hell? This guy who played drums with Stan Kenton, Weather Report?" And there were plenty of hipper drummers out there. But I think Joe and Wayne were intrigued by, if they'd heard me play with Stan, they never would have hired me. I know that for a fact.
Really?
But yeah. But they liked the idea somehow. They were remembering the Kenton band from the 50s, I think. They just liked the idea that, wow, this guy played with Kenton. Because, the Kenton band made a big impression on Wayne back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So, interesting.
Yeah.
Where life takes us. I think the balance of luck in our lives. You want to try to meet that, or find good balance between luck and being prepared.
Yeah.
And being prepared really just means paying attention and trusting yourself, and being relaxed, and preparation. I mean, the only time people really get nervous is when they know, yeah, I didn't prepare enough for this.
That's true.
Right? You study enough for a test? Cool.
Yeah.
I'm not nervous because we're going to do this because I've studied for this interview 50 years.
Right.
Right? So, cool.
What Peter, what do you think, if there's one or two things that you've seen over the course of being a musician that most drummers miss, what is it? What is it that most drummers need to pay more attention to or invest themselves into more?
Okay. Let me preface my my response with saying that I think drummers today are playing at a higher level
Mm-hmm.
than we ever would have thought possible. And it's not to say, playing circles around Buddy Rich. Buddy was kind of is the exception to all things.
Human.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's just such a remarkable drumming icon.
Right.
But in terms of what can be done on the kit, um, I mean, Tony took it places it had never been. Jack DeJohnette took it places it had never been. Billy Cobham took it places it had never been. But the drummers now, wow! I mean, it's just it's great. It's really exciting. It's very cool. The density level of a lot of it is I can admire it. It's not a thing that I'm drawn to.
Right.
So I don't offer this next part of my response as this is the way it should be. Or
Right.
it's just, I can only say what works for me.
Yeah.
And what works for me is understanding that just about every rhythm I play comes from tone, comes from a place of tone. And when I get a sound, and I'm playing that sound with intention, and intention then becomes part of the whole rhythmic thing. I can weave, I can create a horizon, valleys and mountains, and I mix my metaphors, and I can weave throughout the texture and fabric of the music because my antennae or my radar is tuned into that. When it was tuned into performing,
Yeah.
I missed all that. So for me, performing and getting tight and playing more notes than I needed to just effectively blocked me off from the way I wanted it to sound. And I was smart enough to, when I would hear it back, I go, it's close, but I know what my intention was, and I'm not connecting to the intention.
Interesting.
And I had to realize, I had to stop fighting the instrument, as well as fighting the musical process.
Very interesting. Thank you. Do you have, by any chance, one of these tracks handy to play to for us?
Well, I can play two. I don't have it with Garzone. I mean, that was live, so we did.
Yeah.
But with my play along Jazz Essentials app, I can.
That'd be great. And we'd love to see the overhead view, of course.
Okay. I'll play a little bit. Let me know. Wave to me if the balance seems really off.
Okay.
Autumn Leaves, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
That's perfect.
And let's do that. Okay. This should be cool. I'm going to turn off my voice mic.
Okay. Brushes, folks.
1, 2, 1, 2.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. That was great.
So
Thank you.
that's the Jazz Essentials play along app, and so I can take the drums out, take the click out. You heard me just do a quick fade on the piano.
Yeah,
Um,
that was great.
we have a
Thank
big band app where you can solo the drums, or you can minus the drums, or percussion, or the bass, or the guitar, or first trumpet, or second trumpet, first trombone, bass trombone, alto,
Wow.
tenor, bari sax. That was kind of a masterpiece of app design and engineering.
Where can
Um,
people get that, Peter?
you can get that at the App Store.
Okay,
It's designed for iPhone and iPad,
great.
and it was just announced yesterday that going forward, all new Macintosh computers, I don't know if you know this, will uh, will operate iOS apps.
Yeah,
In other words, you can run your software platform from the iPhone or the iPad on your Mac computer. So that means all our apps will become available for
great.
computer use.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, we have an amazing Brazilian app. We have an Afro-Cuban app, uh,
Wow.
and the big band app, and these two play alongs. And also we have David Garibaldi's Code of Funk
Oh, wow.
in app form, so you can solo different parts of the kit, solo his drumming, or take his drumming out and play along with Tower Power.
That's great. Wow,
Pretty
how
cool
fun.
stuff.
Cool. I have one more question from the audience, then I have one last question.
All right.
Uh, let's see. Where did it go? Bear with me. So, John Kinston, who's a Drum Talk TV contributor, he does a couple different series with us in Michigan, says, any chance you were at Interlochen National Music Camp around 1963 ish? And by the way, we have a mutual friend in Ann Hills. John told me a story this morning where he believes he remembers he was on stage with you, not performing. He's a drummer as well, on stage with you at some sort of awards presentation at Interlochen in 1962, 63. Do you remember that?
I did not attend the summer camp at Interlaken.
Ah,
So my first experience of setting foot uh, on the grounds of Interlaken was in the early autumn of 1968.
oh,
And there was this very cute girl I noticed by the end of that school year. Her name is Ann Hills. Um, and I'm getting sentimental now. She held my hand as we walked back from the lake. And to a young 14-year-old kid, that just blew his mind.
I
Uh,
bet.
and yeah, we were boyfriend and girlfriend for
Oh,
a few years, and we're very good friends to this day. We stay in touch. We collaborate. She's a wonderful singer, songwriter, as well as lyricist.
oh, nice.
And uh, we did a couple of songs, part of a song cycle thing, for a group based in Europe, um, consisting of two lutes
Hmm.
and two vocalists. One of them, John Potter from the Hilliard Ensemble.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and so we're looking forward to hopefully getting recordings. The plan is they're going to record it for a new album.
Wow, how exciting. Well,
Yeah,
I've,
so if you're young and you're in school, as I say, form your posse. These are the people you'll be working with for the rest of your life. Bob Mintzer, of big band fame and of Yellow Jackets fame, and he's been the chair of jazz studies up until just now. Uh, he's stepping down, but he'll still be at the University of Southern California, the Thornton School of Music. Bob and I met in 1969.
wow.
Alan Pasqua, I mentioned, we met in 1971.
Yeah.
Um,
It
our
speaks
mutual
again
friend
to how
met in
important
1968.
relationships
Huh?
are. It speaks again to how important relationships are.
Yeah, yeah. So,
It's
you
everything.
know, here's a simple answer to everyone's questions, all of them. Number one, play what you want to hear. Number two, don't be a jerk.
Yeah, there you go. And my last question for this interview is this. It's the Peter Erskine fun fact question. When you're not teaching, when you're not recording, when you're not performing, when you're not doing anything related to music, what do you like to do? How do you like to spend your time?
Um, I'm a little bit of a workaholic, so I tend to spend more time in front of the computer screen than I ought to. Uh, but my favorite things are going for walks with my wife, and now going for walks. Well, she's a puppy. We have a new dog, and she's a little too young to take out for walks yet, but that will become my new thing. And photography is my favorite
Oh,
hobby. But I love learning different stuff about computers. So I'm taking Adobe Premiere lessons right now.
hmm.
I want to start taking some Logic lessons, uh, and I think I mentioned Artist Works. I'm gonna, I've already watched 3 ukulele lessons. So
Right. And regarding photography, what are your favorite subjects to work with?
architecture.
Oh, wow.
I like taking pictures of people, but more than anything else, I seem to be drawn to going for walks and either taking photos, uh, the shapes of buildings in
Yeah,
relation to their surroundings, or people interacting with those, uh, you know, with those buildings.
that's neat. I have a
That's
son who is into the same thing. My son Alex Shinder Photography. He worked with us at the past NAM show as our photographer, but he loves taking picture of architecture and all the different angles and shadows and things that creates. That's really
yeah,
neat.
it's very cool. Uh, my my niece's husband, they live up in Victoria, British
Hmm.
Columbia, and he showed me some photos. I mean, he's got some really good glass on these cameras, uh, and what he was doing in Photoshop, they went to Joshua Tree, and the
Whoa.
detail on the rocks and the cacti, and then the
Sky.
stars.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like, whoa, this is a whole other level of. But I met a photographer in Germany who guided me towards getting a Leica
Oh.
camera, and it's one of the smaller ones. But he gave me some settings.
Mm-hmm.
He said that these menus get many pages deep, and it's not easy to access some of these controls. But I'll give you a kind of a step by step. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I
That's
just
okay.
burped. Becoming Homer Simpson. There you go. No, is he the one that burps, or is it Mo? Anyway,
Oh, it's Barney.
oh Barney.
Barney, yeah. Of
Anyway,
The Simpsons, yeah, his barmate.
excuse me, folks. I think I'm well. Oh, I had 2 cups of coffee. Maybe that did it. Anyway, um, so having these settings, and then just so for a long while, I was really invested in black and white photography, and then for a while, I was really getting into HD and just really intrigued by the iPhone. I'd go to the iPhone, then I'd get a camera, and then I'd go back to the iPhone because I was very fascinated by just, especially nowadays, what a great camera that is. But my camera of choice right now is a Fuji. Uh, I think it's the X100F. It's a very retro looking
Mm-hmm.
camera, and I have to get back to it. I promised myself during the lockdown I would really learn that, and I think I made too many promises to myself, and I didn't want to be a productivity porn provider, to make look at everything I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny. I,
So
I like,
I have been keeping a list. The greatest thing about the lockdown, in addition to whatever spiritual growth, and I'm not being insensitive to the death and the suffering,
yeah,
and I feel awful for everyone who's suffered or has lost someone. Um, but we're all in this situation together, and a lot of us are confronting amounts of time that we haven't had before.
right.
I feel very lucky because we have a backyard. We live in California. Um, just I think I overpromised to myself the things I would want to get done. Um, but I've caught up on just about every household chore, everything it needed fixing. Replacing lamp switches, and
I
I'm
keep thinking
getting pretty
that.
handy.
I keep thinking that, but my wife, who you met before we went live, she keeps adding to that list somehow. I'm not sure what's going on with that. And you mentioned iPhone photography. That's about all I've had time to kind of get my head around. And I love gardening. So the first thing I do in the morning when I get up is I throw a bunch of bird seed out for the birds and I water. There you go. And I do a lot of macro photography of my flowers and little like bumblebees and bugs on the flowers. I just love that. I post more
Wow.
of that on my personal Facebook page than I do of our 11 combined kids and 19 grandkids. It's all about the cat and flowers.
With the iPhone, huh?
Yeah, I'm amazed. And it's not even the newest model. It's a 6 Plus, and I cannot believe the detail I can get really up close. Just
What? Wow.
amazing.
I
And
got to
depth
know
of
something.
field. Yeah. Well, great, Peter. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, everybody, for following what we do. I really appreciate it, especially in these really bizarre times. And, Peter, please,
One,
yeah,
if okay, one commercial announcement.
sure,
Uh,
please.
this is a book I wrote co-wrote with Dave Black.
Oh,
We've done
wow.
a drummer's lifeline a while back. This is the musician's lifeline,
Oh, brilliant. There it is, Musician's Lifeline.
right? And there you go.
Yeah.
And this is there were 7 questions that I sent to 250 musicians, most of them friends, but some heroes that I hadn't met yet. And
Mm-hmm.
um, we heard back from 165. It's not a bad rate of return.
Yeah.
Here are the questions.
Okay.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh,
What's the best advice you've ever given? Now, I told everyone short answers are preferred. Occasionally I get
yeah.
a 5-page document, but um, what's the one thing you'd have done differently in your studies or career? Best travel advice? Kind of a moot point now, but best sight reading advice. Next time you
Mm.
and I get together, I'll show you some sight reading stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have any business advice for a musician? And finally, any advice relating to people skills? And the answers are remarkable.
Oh, wow. I'm going to
We
get
also
that.
we also get into auditioning within the school setting or auditioning in the real world for a gig. Some incredible advice.
Great.
Uh, so, number one, if you're auditioning, here's one thing to remember: the people sitting on the other side of the table want you to win. They're on your side. They want you to succeed. They're not there against you. So, if you can tap into that power, uh, it might prove helpful. The other thing, the overriding response to would you have done anything differently? Can you guess what that was?
Practice more?
Warm. And a few people did say that, but
Study
the
more?
overall response was that they would have been more serious about piano.
Oh, wow. Brilliant. Of course. Yeah.
And so my hope was, wow, if someone's kind of on the fence because they have to take keyboard proficiency or piano, like maybe they'll dive in and really learn how to read at the piano. Because boy, what I sure wish I could, I
Yeah.
mean, I play enough piano that I wouldn't play at a party. So I'm not that good.
Yeah. I'm the
Uh,
same way. I learned when I was like 10, 11, 12. Did it for a while and kind of never went back to it whatsoever.
it's a beautiful instrument.
Yeah.
I have a very nice Yamaha piano here. You know what? It's a disc clavier as well. So the next time we do this, I'll do a play along with Monty Alexander.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
It's something I have my students do, and I'll look forward to coming back. And now, do you
Thank
want me
you.
to stick around after you sign off?
Yes, please.
All right.
Please. Yeah. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, everybody, for joining Peter and myself here on Drum Talk TV. If you missed any of this, go back and watch it from the beginning. Lots of takeaways and fun stories and demonstrations. Thank you so much for following what we do here on Drum Talk TV. Stay safe, everybody.